72 tahun menjalani hubungan diplomatik, kemitraan Indonesia dan Inggris yang terjalin dengan berlandaskan prinsip saling menghargai serta menguntungkan kedua belah pihak terbukti telah meningkatkan hubungan bilateral keduanya. Apalagi peluang mempererat hubungan kedua negara lebih luas. Simak perbincangan koresponden CNN Indonesia Sufiani Tanjung dengan Duta Besar Inggris untuk Indonesia Owen Jenkins.
Hubungan diplomatik Indonesia dan Inggris telah terjalin sejak lama, sejak tahun 1949. Kedua negara mengembangkan sejumlah kerjasama strategis di sejumlah bidang. Lantas apa saja kerjasama yang bisa dikembangkan di masa depan di tengah kondisi geopolitik dunia yang kian tidak stabil? Saya akan membahasnya dengan Duta Besar Inggris untuk Indonesia, His Excellency Ambassador Owen Jenkins. Good morning,
Good
Ambassador.
morning. Good morning.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. Great, thank you.
Good.
Thank you for having us, CNN Indonesia, here to talk more about your country and our relation.
Not at all, it's my pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Okay, so I'm going to start to kick the first question.
Please.
How do you see the connection or the bilateral relation between Indonesia and UK?
I think it's in really good shape. I think both Indonesia and the UK see that there is enormous potential for us to cooperate more across a whole range of fields. We agreed a bilateral roadmap back in April, and the breadth of that, covering everything from trade investment, through climate change and energy cooperation, through defence and security, to education and culture, just shows how much we can do together and how positive it is for both countries if we do that. So I feel really lucky that I'm here in Indonesia at such a great time in the UK-Indonesia relationship.
Okay, so basically Indonesia now holding the presidency of G20 for this year, and UK is one country that really support the presidency G20 from Indonesia this year. So how do you see our team that we raised together, recover stronger? Do you think it's relevant with the global situation nowadays?
Absolutely. I think that recover together, recover stronger is exactly the slogan and the theme that the world needs. And I think when Indonesia set out not just the slogan, but its three key priorities of energy transition, digital transformation and strengthening international health architecture, when it set those out back in January, we all thought that Indonesia had done exactly the right thing. And it's still the agenda we need right now because we're all facing difficult economic times. Of course, Indonesia's job was made much, much harder by the illegal and unjustified war of aggression which President Putin launched on Ukraine in February. And we sympathise enormously with our Indonesian friends with the difficulties that has caused for them. But despite that, the agenda of economic recovery and cooperation to ensure that is exactly the right one.
Okay, so Ambassador, from your own perspective, do you think what is the benefit from the G20 forum for both of us, for UK and Indonesia relation, for nowadays and also for the future?
So I think we can both benefit tremendously from the G20 presidency. I think, as I say, the issues which Indonesia has defined as the key issues for the presidency are the ones which will stimulate both the UK economy and Indonesia's economy as we go forward. We're both facing that energy transition, that digital transformation, and the need to focus on health. And the G20 has helped us strengthen those partnerships. So we have a really strong partnership on supporting Indonesia's renewable energy transition. We have a health partnership which has really increased during the pandemic, and we work very closely together on digital issues as well. So I think that by defining those issues, Indonesia has really helped the bilateral relationship focus on what matters to both sides.
Okay, so in the middle of the economic recession right now, what is the policy that UK will impose to your own country to prevent your country to falling deeper into the crisis?
Sure. So our Prime Minister, Mr. Rishi Sunak, has made very clear that supporting our economy and defending the most vulnerable people in our societies against the impacts of the economic downturn is his top priority. And within that, one of the key things to do is to fight inflation. Because inflation and the cost of living increases are what makes life most difficult for people, including the poorest in our society. So tackling inflation is one thing. but also, as I say, protecting the most vulnerable. Our government has introduced a very significant program of support for energy prices to protect people from the very stark increases in energy prices which Putin's war of aggression has caused worldwide. And then the third thing I'd highlight is the need to make sure our public finances are on a stable footing. And this government is very committed to ensuring that happens too.
Do you think what will be the future of the Indonesia and UK relation?
And I think Indonesia has its own as well. So since we agreed the roadmap back in April, we've established a new framework for our trade relationships under a joint economic and trade committee. And I'd really like to see the trade and investment flows in both directions increase over the next few years, because I think two economies the size of Indonesia and the UK's should be trading more between each other. So I'd like to focus on that. I'm really pleased that our relationship on climate change and energy is growing really fast. Just 2 weeks ago, our Minister for Asia and the Environment signed a new Memorandum of Understanding with Her Excellency Minister Siti Nurbaya to support Indonesia's very impressive and ambitious goal to make its forestry and land use sector a net carbon sink by 2030. And we have a terrific programme of cooperation on renewable energy called Mentari. I'd like to see those two sectors grow really strongly. And I think there's much more we can do together in the area of education, research and science. Well, the first thing he'll want to do is provide really strong support to the Indonesian presidency, who have done an absolutely extraordinary job in very difficult circumstances. So he will want to bring his support to the positive agenda of economic recovery which Indonesia has set out. He will also want to support the presidency in managing the discussion of Putin's illegal war of aggression against Ukraine. This is something which the 20 biggest economies in the world cannot ignore, particularly given the very terrible impact which Russia's war has had on the world economy. So he will want to bring that to the table, but to talk about that in a way that supports the presidency and addresses the very big challenges which Putin's war have imposed on all of us.
Okay, thank you so much, His Excellency Ambassador Owen Jenkins.
My pleasure,
I hope
thank
you stay healthy. Dan demikian wawancara saya dengan Duta Besar Inggris untuk Indonesia, His Excellency Ambassador Owen Jenkins. Terima kasih dan sampai jumpa.